You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview.
Jason, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing? I mean, you are at the end of the line. It's been I'm sure a very busy and interesting 6 months. I mean, what are you looking back now? Has everything been what you hoped for? Maybe even better than expected with this PFL season 1?
I think a little better than expected. I mean, we all of us, the industry, the PFL, the fighters. I think we all looked at this new season sort of as a new journey together, and I think the regular season started to play out week after week after week, almost like any sports league would, and that was fun and exciting. And I think the rules and regulations and the fighters really showed they had the stuff by getting a lot of finishes, and then we launched ourselves into this fight twice, win twice playoffs in October, and I think it just held up as what we said. We said it was going to be the most exciting night in fighting, and I really think the fighters showed that that one night tournament playoff format is a winner. They were excited about it. They fought smart. They knew they had to get through a 2-round quarterfinal, and then we had some great semifinals, and now it's all set up, and the fighters have really rested up well. Ray and the team have been in touch with all 12 of them. Everyone seems ready to go, and we're going to crown 6 millionaires here in a week's time on New Year's Eve in Madison Square Garden, and it's been a great journey, and really looking forward to the championship evening.
Now, of course, a lot to talk about with this DraftKings partnership coming up. But before we get to that, I have a bunch of questions. I mean, going back to the finals, are there any matchups amongst these 6 finals fights that are just purely as a fan and not as a league president that you are really looking forward to watching on New Year's Eve?
It's a great question, and I go through the matchups all the time for different reasons, whether we're going through the DraftKings game as it was being developed, and talking to folks about all the matchups. And I have to tell you that every single matchup you look at, you sort of forget that there's another matchup that is just as exciting. Mm-hmm. And so, if you look at all 6, I mean, I think you look at some guys that we're excited about. I mean, you look at what Ray Cooper's done this year, and it's phenomenal. I mean, the speed and the power that he has shown has been pretty breathtaking. I mean, even veterans like Jake Shields, backstage after that second fight, he just said, man, those hands were really heavy. And so he tried to do some stuff. He just couldn't get around that speed and power. So I'm certainly excited to see how Ray responds in the championship against a really tough, Magomed Karamov, who's slippery, who's smart, who's really a good tactical fighter. But, we'll see if Ray's got too much power for him. So that's certainly a great one to look for. And it's the last fight of the night. And so, and then earlier in that night, you can't take away what Vinny Magalhães has done this year too. Mm-hmm. He's been fit. He looks great. He's just, I think, trained. Look, he's already a world champion in a discipline. And, now in MMA, I think he's really put his head and his body around how he becomes the PFL champion this year. And so, but, you can't discount him against, Sean O'Connell, who's just continued to surprise everybody at just the moment where you thought he was going down. He turns and throws and hits a home run. And so, those are just 2, but I have to tell you, all 6 fights, I'm excited for each one of them. I tell you, they're all going to be great.
Now, what are your plans starting January 1? Does the staff get a little break and maybe vacation because it's crazy 6 months? Or are you right away transitioning into final planning for season 2?
Yeah, I think the league will take just a moment to take a breath and enjoy the championship, just like the fighters and the fans hopefully do for that that week. And then, we'll be right back at it. We've got our roster to assemble for the 2019 season. We've got, that roster's already a quarter of the way, a third of the way there. And we'll start in January getting to 50 fighters, and in February getting to the roster, the full roster for 2019. And as we've got, a new roster category in the 155 female division. anchored by Kayla, and Kayla's also a special event on New Year's Eve, and I'm sure she'll be ready to come out and show everyone that she's got her final prep in before she competes in 2019 for $1 million.
So it seems like February when things really are gonna be, kind of finishing up in terms of a general idea for you guys. So should we expect around February, March, around that time in terms of a finalized roster, making statements on, big time additions to the roster and a firm set date for when season 2 will start?
All of those things will be coming out in January, February, and March. And, along the way, we'll be giving everyone updates as the roster begins to build for 2019.
Now, in our last conversation, you told me about how all semifinalists are automatically on the roster for next year. But, what about guys who perform very well but maybe miss the semis for various reasons, like Kelvin Tiller and Abubakar Nurmagomedov, who had a lot of upside but just fell short in the quarterfinals, or Joao Zeferino, who was great in the season but was out of the playoffs due to injury? How much of the non-semis roster do you think will be returning for season 2?
Yeah, it's a really great overview, Jason. You're right. And, all of those guys, all of those guys that you mentioned had a great season. They're all on our short list as we build out the roster. I mentioned that we've got, about 25 names that are part of that, group of folks that made it into the semifinals. As it turns out, Abubakar is one of those guys, even though he didn't compete in the semifinals. He made it into the semifinals. Unfortunately, he had an injured hand and couldn't compete. So he'll be on that list to come back for next year. And then as you mentioned, some of those folks that got into the quarterfinals and even had great showings in the regular season and might have missed the playoffs, just by a hair, by a point or something. All those guys are sort of part of that group 2 selection process that we'll start to roll through in January and February to get to the final roster.
Now, for those fighters that are automatically on the roster next year, I mean, like the champions, the semifinalists, because the PFL is much more like some of the more leagues that a lot of people are familiar with, NFL, NBA, are those contracts, especially for the champions, do they automatically renew, or is it similar to contracts in the other leagues where it's like a team and a player option, and those men get the chance to say, okay, I want to stay or I don't want to stay?
Yeah, all of our fighters in 2018 were under multi-year contracts, so really there's no issues in terms of renewing and moving forward with with those folks that made it deep into the playoffs last year. Certainly our champions this year as well. And so those things from a contract perspective are already set for 2019.
Now, one loss you may incur, and a name you brought up before, is Jake Shields. I talked with him after the season. Great conversation about the idea of him retiring. He's seriously thinking about it. He was unsure at the time. But what are your thoughts on Shields coming back? He's not in his prime, of course, but he's still a very good fighter, notable name. And or if he does retire, what are your thoughts on what he has given to the sport in a 20-plus year career?
Look, I mean, we said it throughout as we entered into 2018. Jake's a big name. He's fought everyone. He's beaten so many great fighters. He's been in the middle of so many big fights over the years. Back in his days when he was in Strikeforce, the UFC. But I think he's been a great fighter for World Series of Fighting and for the Professional Fighters League. I think he came up against a really, a young superstar in Ray Cooper. And you know what? That happens to everyone in any sport. And so, I don't think that takes away anything from Jake. Jake, I think, was ready for that second fight in the regular season. He said it himself. He just couldn't counter, the power and the speed of Ray Cooper. And so, look, we'll talk to Jake. Jake's on our list, along with a bunch of other fighters as we look to grow it. And, we'll be talking to Jake and his management, as we get into January about his plans, for 2019 and, whether he wants to keep fighting. If he wants to keep fighting, we'll certainly, he's already under contract with the PFL, so we'll sit down and talk to him about continuing with the PFL if he wants to continue fighting.
Now, I've talked to a lot of fighters during the season, talked to quite a few of the finalists, and the common thread between all of them, and even Jake Shields, who's had UFC experience, is how happy they have been to be a part of the PFL. I mean, even I've talked to Ray Cooper, and the first time I talked to him, he was kind of so-so, didn't seem, to be a big fan of the media stuff. But the second time, he just happier. The man seemed happier. And even asked him, he said he's happier because guys are making more money than they usually do because of the format, because of the activity. Have you noticed, like, the fighters, as the season has progressed, a deeper appreciation for the league and really understanding what you all knew you had in the beginning with this format, fighters getting paid? Have you noticed fighters, like, a loyalty really building because they have appreciated what the PFL is offering?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, look, in fairness to everyone, this is season one, and I think all of us, we had some really great plans. I think we did a lot of, prep work. This was, 3 years in the making just to get there and come up with this format. And I think everyone was in a wait and see moment. And as each fight progressed from June, into the playoffs, when we sat in front of the fighters on playoff night, we were whittled down to 8 fighters in each weight class. You could see that they knew that they had gotten an opportunity that they're never going to get before. And I know they all really appreciated what, Ray and the team and our owners and our management all did for them. And I think that's how we approached it. I think they appreciated it. I think it's played out well. And everyone does seem happy. Everyone's working hard. And I think the fans are getting the results and, getting to see a great product as a result of that.
Now, just 2 more questions before we talk DraftKings. I follow you on Twitter and Instagram, and I remember a few months back you making a trip, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was to Monaco on behalf of the PFL. Could you talk a bit about that? And are there plans for any international events for the PFL, maybe if not season 2, season 3?
Yeah, in season 2 we're going to be stateside for our events. I think after season 2, we'll look at some international opportunities. We were over in Monaco because there's a big international distribution conference there, and we were over there talking with a number of international distributors that want to take the PFL championships and the PFL fights for 2019. And so we had some great meetings over there. Things are progressing nicely in some big regions. And we'll be making those announcements after the championship as well as we lay out our 2019 plans.
Now, there are a lot of rumors of the demise of the UFC's men's flyweight division, meaning a lot of talented men will be available soon. Does the league have interest in a men's flyweight division or even a bantamweight division for that matter? Or do you feel maybe the North American fan base just does not appreciate these smaller fighters? And because even Bellator has not even jumped on a flyweight division officially.
Yeah, there's definitely been a North American sort of reluctance to jump on, undoubtedly some amazing athletes that can do things that some of the big guys can't do. Having said that, we've got our, weight divisions. As you know, in 2018, we fought from 45 up to heavyweight. And, and with the addition of the 155 women in 2019, we won't be adding any additional weight classes for 2019. But, look, in all cases, there's always opportunities. And like any smart growing sports league, we'll keep an eye on the developments in 2019 and see if there should be some changes in 2020.
All right, now to talk about DraftKings, I appreciate your patience on the other questions. So, how did this partnership with this major online betting site come about, and why is it a beneficial deal for both sides?
Well, look, I mean, one of the really great assets that the PFL has is an investor base and an ownership group that is, just embedded in sport and embedded in the digital landscape. Not just now, but, from the last 10 years of the developments. And so, with that great ownership group, we had, some really great opportunity and access into the DraftKings team. We know Ezra Kushar well from over the years. We know David Lebo well from over the years. David was also, at America Online back in the day. And so we started talking, really originally started thinking about a 2019 deal, but the DraftKings guys, great engineering team, great ability to put a product together, we're able to pull something off. And as a result, we decided that we'd start sooner. And so we're excited to announce that the 6 championship fights, you'll be able to go into DraftKings, $25,000 prize pool this year. The game launched yesterday. You can go in and register right now at DraftKings.com/PFLMMA and, make your picks. And it's going to be exciting. It's, I think, the beginning of a great partnership with DraftKings. We're super excited about it.
Now, I've done some UFC betting on DraftKings. Is there a difference between the PFL version? Like, will it be unique and be able to stand out from what maybe users of the site are already used to with the UFC?
I think so. I mean, I really think the way that we structured the game, the way that you pick your fighters, the way that you pick how they're going to finish the fight, and even down to the second when the fight will end, if you happen to choose a submission or a finish like a knockout or a TKO. And so there's different points that are available based on your selections, and I do think it's unique. I do think it's going to be a lot of fun for the users.
Now, will we see any real-time crossover on the PFL broadcast with the DraftKings deal? Like, will we be seeing information during the show of the game and how to play, maybe tips or favorites or points, anything? So while someone's watching, they go, oh, they're on DraftKings. Let me go over. Let me do some bets. This is fun. Is there anything going to be any crossover like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the nice things about the game is that you can choose one fight or you can choose 6 fights. So as the evening rolls out, as the fights begin, you obviously have to get your selection in before the, quote, lockout that happens right before the bell rings and the fighters come out. But, yes, Randy and Todd and Boss and, Eves and Caroline will all be talking about the matchups, what it looks like, and, make sure that they remind everyone to go to DraftKings.com to, go play, get your points, and see if you can win. As I was telling everyone yesterday, if you don't play, you can't win, and it's really true. And we'll definitely be talking about that on the NBC Sports Network broadcast for sure.